and welcome to the Two Gals and a Mic podcast. I'm your host, Sue Curver, and on today's show, I'm chatting with a registered nurse who has the gift of gab. Liz Luehder believes that friendships are formed when commonalities are found, and her superpower is creating the magic to help people find these common threads. Liz, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Sue.
Thanks for being here. I have to say that you are probably one of the most optimistic people that I have ever met. You always have a smile on your face and you seem to find the silver lining in all of the dark clouds. Where does your sense of optimism come from?
That is a great question. I feel like I've been asked that by other people in the past, and I honestly don't know if I have a great answer. I think my sense of optimism just comes with being hopeful for people in general, and I like to really meet people where they're at in life. I just am truly genuinely interested in other people, finding out about them. And my optimism stems in just the joy of learning who people are.
So I mentioned in the intro that are a registered nurse, and that obviously is a profession where at its very core, you're dealing with people and you're meeting them most cases in some of the worst times in their life. Let's talk about your path to becoming a nurse. What prompted you to go into the medical field?
Well, I have a pretty interesting path to nursing. It leads all the way back to when I was a high schooler. My father, who has been kind of my cheerleader to becoming a nurse in the first place, said, you just be an excellent doctor. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine what it would be like to be a physician. And I don't know if I could do such a thing. He just, let that go and just prompted me. And off to college I went way back in the day. I do really love science. I've always loved research, biology and chemistry. And so I decided, well, I'm pretty good at that. Let's get my first degree in that. So I got a job right out of college working in a lab that put me in a yellow room of all things by myself. And I thought, oh, dear Lord, what am I going to do in here? Maybe this is not my gig. And interestingly, I had taken a class right before I graduated in human embryology. That is what really got me. I was like, oh, that is just the most interesting thing I have ever learned about. So I decided to get into research, and I'm in this yellow room. I was like, this may be not my stride. So from there, I decided to get out of the yellow lab and go into teaching. And I worked at a private academy where I taught students French, photography, and science. And so from there, I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter Olivia, my firstborn. And again, that passion for babies and embryology and science. And now I'm living through it. And that was remarkable to kind of go through such an experience. And that's when I got introduced truly to the field of nursing.
So, were you in nursing during COVID-19?
I actually went to nursing school after my son was born. I remember it very distinctly. I was folding the laundry and I had the kids running around in circles around me. And I was like, gosh, Dad, I think I'm thinking about going back to nursing school. But gosh, I'm going to be 36 when I graduate. I don't know. That seems kind of old to get into a new profession. And he goes, well, Liz, you're going to be 36 no matter what. So you better just do it. And so I became a nurse in 2011, and I went straight into the OB field. During the COVID times, I'm actually was working as a clinical informatics nurse. So I got away from bedside care and kind of went into more of the IT work. And I worked at the time kind of being the liaison between nurses and physicians and end users and the people who built the system.
But I'd like to go back to the first question I asked you about your sense of optimism. Was it hard for you, even though you were not bedside to maintain a sense of optimism with so much uncertainty happening, especially in that medical atmosphere?
It was really difficult. We went from being in clinics, working with people at the bedside, doing whatever it is to help nurses and doctors care for patients, to being in my current office that I'm doing this interview with you. And there was a really hard, almost disconnect with our providers and nurses, and knowing that they were doing all that frontline care. And how in the world did I not get that lot in life and in my decision of my job? We became kind of a different kind of support during that on our IT team. We did a ton of reporting to HHS. We did immediate implementation of workflows remotely. And in that first, 3 to 6 month period, we also shored up our skills, if you will, because we also could have been called into the front lines. So we were kind of in the wings waiting, and it was kind of scary. Yeah.
So now I know that you have again transitioned to a new role and you're using all of this experience in a different way. Tell us about that and the impact that you're making now.
Very quickly, once we got COVID under control, our local hospital here decided to build a whole new unit of a women's tower. So we opened up a new labor and delivery, a NICU, which we had never had, an OR for our OB group that we had never had, and relocated what we currently had to a whole different place. And it was really awesome. I got to be really part of that transition. I'd have to say that was one of my most favorite projects ever that I've done. It was just pretty awesome. And to walk the halls now and having seen it from studs out develop was just really a very exciting experience. And then we decided to build our own EMR system, and I went to the build team, and I spent the last 3 years just learning how to build a computer system. I kind of akin it to getting the blueprint of like the Death Star for the Lego, you know, and then going, you know what? Actually, we want the windows on this side, and that's kind of what I got to do in a healthcare system, is rearrange the windows of the Death Star to make it better for nurses and doctors.
Liz, real quick, you had mentioned an EMR system.
Yes,
What is that?
electronic medical record. So whenever you go in and type a chat to your doctor through your computer application, it goes to the doctor. So when a provider or nurse documents in the system, I handle just how all those things connect and how all that works, and I kind of just help that run smoothly.
Are you working with the OBGYN group and that whole group that you helped do the build out with?
Yeah, and that was my role initially, is very women's center specific. Now my new role is called a clinical informaticist. I just started that in January, and gosh, I'm really excited about this because it pulls in my original education. It brings in reporting and understanding data. It helps optimize the system to work better. I educate people on how to use it. I even like bring that education experience in, and I'm crafting, education materials and working with the training team to put together a very comprehensive, like how we teach it too. So it kind of has just brought it all full circle, and then I'm pretty excited about it.
And you've mentioned to me before that your whole experience as a nurse and being frontline and using these types of systems has helped you understand what's needed and to refine that in such a way that it makes more sense for the end users, right?
Absolutely. You have to understand what it's like to be a nurse in a patient room doing the thing and taking care of the patient, and why I would want or need to document something for a variety of reasons, whether it's, you know, medical legal charting, it's giving the picture of what's happening to the patient as a nurse. And then, you know, luckily I've got some amazing best friends that I've developed over the last few years, and trying to get into a doctor's head and understand what really matters to them in taking care of a patient, so that I want to make it good for them.
So work's not the only thing that you
Right.
do. You've mentioned you're also a mom. You've got 2 kiddos. You love to explore. How do you balance work and motherhood and all of the adventures that come with living in this amazing state?
First and foremost, I have an incredible family. My husband is just wonderful. He's always the idea maker. He's my dreamer. He's always the one who's just like, hey, let's go skiing today. Hey, come step away from your computer in your house and work, and let's go hike the dog. And he's always my adventure seeker. He's got something up his sleeve almost every day, every other hour. In fact, he's great. He works from home too, which is kind of nice. And I have wonderful children. They're young adults now, and they both live in Bozeman. So it's pretty fun. We check in quite often, and I just love to hear of their comings and goings and adventures. They're really pretty incredible kids. And then I also have just an amazing stream of girlfriends who just are always up for wonderful adventures and really inspire me to do new things and try new things as well.
Do you have a favorite thing that you like to do?
You know, I had an injury actually, which kind of brought me to my new career role, in fact. And so I've spent the last few years retooling what it is I love to do from an activity perspective. Just this year, I decided to sign up for a 28K race in the mountains, a trail run, and I have been training for that, thank goodness, with a good friend who has done it and in fact is like conquered the most incredible feats of this race in her past. And so I have a really nice guiding light to help me organize. But I mostly like to bike and ski. Running on a trail is really something. My heart and my legs are really not a big fan so far.
I love that you talk about trying these new things and doing these things with your family and with your kids and with your set of friends. How about a skill that you would like to develop? Why would this be something that you'd be interested in leaning into?
I kind of find it really hard because I think we're all so, or I certainly am very connected to my work in a technical environment. I'm always like maybe watching a TV show, or I'm on my computer working all day, and then I pick up my phone and I plug in music. Like I'm constantly always technically related. And it's funny, I want to call it a new skill, but maybe it's an old skill of just shutting it all down and like literally opening up a book and reading real paper, and writing, journaling has really come to the forefront of my last few months, and I'm working on crafting that skill through a women's group that I joined that I'm really enjoying.
Anything good on your reading list that you're enjoying right now that you'd recommend?
As far as novels that I'm reading right now, my daughter started her own work reading group, and so I try to get the actual paper copy, even though I feel like listening to it is reading it. I'm not, that's not qualified, you know, listening to an audiobook is not reading the book. So my son says. So I'm trying to read the real book, and I think we're reading Frankenstein right now.
Oh, classic. That's
Class.
classic.
Yes.
And I mean, that also gets back to what you were talking about. You're trying to disengage from technology for a little while and just turn it off, which goes back to this whole idea of self care. We've talked a lot about that with different people on this podcast. What other things do you do for self-care? Like, what does that mean to you, and what are some of the practices that you have?
I've really enjoyed journaling and self-care and discovery. I've learned a lot about the things I think of by writing them down. I find that really interesting. And I know it's always like been there and like, oh, we should write things down. It solidifies your understanding. But it's really interesting what comes out in this stream of consciousness on paper when you're not doing something else. I kind of love that actually. Other than that, oh gosh, I'd love to call my mom. We talk for hours every week. We love to gab. My mom is where I get my gift of gab for sure. I also love playing with my puppy right now, and we get out as much as humanly possible, and that's definitely makes my heart happy.
You just mentioned the art of journaling and self-discovery. What's been the most interesting self-discovery that you have made of late?
The biggest self discovery of late came through, and it's something I think I already knew, but I didn't really think about it until I wrote it down. We did in our women's group a survey to find our strengths. I scored all of my strengths in people, relational. And I think I maybe knew that in my heart, but I didn't really fully write it down and think it through. That's one thing that was really hard from working from home solely was I was just really missing people. People in person people. It's one thing to do the things through the phones and the internets and the TikToks and all the things. But I needed to touch people. And it wasn't until I really fully took that survey and I'm like, whoa, time out. You are going kind of a little bit the wrong direction for your heart right now because you're clearly a people person. I didn't really know it until I wrote it down and I thought it through, and it was pretty much the key for me making a change and walking through some new open doors because I kind of had become maybe, I don't want to use the word complacent, but I didn't even know that maybe I was a bit lonely and needing people.
I want to explore this because in the introduction, I mentioned that you really believe that friendships are formed when commonalities are found. But as we get older, it gets harder and harder to make friends. It gets harder and harder to find this people connection that you're talking about. Like when you're younger, there's things in place that inherently allow you to do that. You maybe are involved with sports, or you're going to school, or you have these different things. What have you found works, like ways that you can connect and forge friendships as adults? How do we find our circles?
Being a kind of recent empty nester, I definitely felt that. We changed our footprint with losing our friendships with we had kids with and going to soccer and all these things. And then we all started working from home because of COVID. And then it just pulled us in all these more very recluse experiences, starting to understand that that was actually happening to me. And I was kind of feeling pretty, maybe just not myself, maybe a little sad. And I just didn't know it. But then I just started to kind of, let the line out and I joined a church. And I really loved that. And one of the people right up at the front said, you know what? You'd be really great introducing yourself as the new crew person. And I thought that was hilarious because I was new too. And even today, when people are like, oh, hey, I'm new here, I'm like, yeah, me too. I don't know where the room is. Let's go over here and ask somebody else. So I think just broadening my circles and being brave and joining a women's group was very outside my comfortable zone. It took a lot for me to just even go to church. And then here I am now standing saying, hey, I'm new here too. I even had to learn how to just leave the house this month. I have to have 4 bags to leave the house. What's up with that? I need a lunchbox, a work bag, a workout bag, an extra bag just in case. Like, what if I don't have something? It's ridiculous. It's a skill I'm working on getting back.
But it's hard. I was talking with Josh, my partner, about this last night, and I too work fully remote. So I'm at home most of the time. And there can be days where, I have my morning routine, I go to the gym, I come back, but then I can be at home for long periods of time and engaging with people over video conference calls, but not with that personal interaction. And there's something that really feeds your soul when you're interacting on a personal cellular level, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, 100%. I feel sorry for the checkout clerks because I will just start gabbing. Like, they're like, "Oh, how's your day?" I'm like, "Oh, let me tell you." I need to be like in the slow checkout line because I was like, "Okay, this gabbing situation of mine needs to be expanded so I can let society get their errands done."
So how about what's next for you? I mean, you're in this new role. The new role is remote, but you are finding ways to connect with women and connect with people, and you're obviously adventuring as you've already talked about. What are you wanting to achieve in the next couple of years?
Well, luckily my role is going to be expanding. I get to be both working from my office here, but I get to be elbow in-person support. So, from a work perspective, I'm really excited. I'm going to just be out and about working with the end user again and reintroducing basically a whole new concept. So, I'm pretty excited about that. Personally, I just really want to continue to work through the church with a women's group. I feel like I've got maybe some undiscovered strengths that I just don't know how to plug into with that yet. But I feel like I have some incredible women and mentors there that I get to keep learning about and discovering with. So I'm excited about that. And then I kind of look forward to what the next few years are in my family. I have a young and exciting developing family with young adults and an amazing husband. And maybe we'll get to do some traveling and just kind of get to do some of that kind of stuff. I'm pretty excited about that as well.
Traveling. So what's on your bucket list? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do?
Oh, I'm ready to travel internationally. We got to stamp some passports. My bucket list, I would love to go to Italy. I'd love to explore Norway. I'd love to do Ireland. Also, I have always had some hot desire to go to Africa. I don't know why yet. I think going and experiencing that culture would just be unbelievable.
Do you have a preference? East Africa, West Africa, South Africa?
No preference.
No?
Not yet.
I lived in East Africa for a while. Yeah, it was a pretty life-changing experience in a good way, but it was also very challenging because it offered a lot of opportunities to look at the world in a way that I never had imagined or thought of. So speaking of challenges, what's been the biggest challenge in your life and what was your strategy for getting through it?
One of the biggest challenges of late in my life was really recovering through. I had an injury that kind of took me out of being a bedside nurse. It's what led to this incredible new career I have, and I see it now, and I think it was meant maybe to be. But there was one thing I just never thought I never wanted to not be was a labor and delivery nurse at the bedside. I feel like that is such a special time in a family's life, and it was very incredible to be able to be a part of that for so many people. So that was a huge challenge for me to not only be hurt and taken out of my career, but then and physically overcome what I needed to overcome, which took many years of care. And then to come out the other side was just, it was a long road, but I'm thrilled to be where I'm at now.
So I read something recently and they call that a divine detour where you end up you maybe don't see the logic or the reason behind it at the time, but retrospectively, you can look back and you can say, "Oh my gosh, this is why," and it all makes sense, and you end up on this beautiful life journey that is definitely not a linear path. I mean, it can it can be a little circuitous at times, I think. But I think if you lean into gratitude for that, even when the things are hard and you can look for those silver linings that we talked about, you can come off better at the other side. So, if we want to increase our optimism and if we want to increase our sense of gratitude, do you have any practical nuggets of wisdom for ways that we can do that?
I think for me, it lies in hope. Hope for what's maybe planned for us that we're unaware of, that we just don't even know about, and also just being very open. You know, that open door concept. I feel like I've been integrating that a little bit into my being and just being willing to walk through open doors, whether they're scary or exciting or seem like that it's a little thing. Like I feel like sometimes I walk through some open doors and I'm like, well, well, that didn't work, but oh my gosh, look what it did for me 5 years ago. Like, if I wouldn't have done that little thing. So, my optimism just comes through continued regeneration and hope for the future and excitement for what's to come, because I think it's all very exciting.
Well, thank you, Liz, for joining us today to share your insights and your inspiration. You are spreading optimism, love, and light to so many, which is really, really needed in today's world. So thanks for shining your light so brightly.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, listeners, for joining us for this uplifting conversation. Without your support, none of this would be possible. So be sure to leave a comment and subscribe to the show so you don't miss any of these amazing stories. I'll see you again next week for another edition of Two Gals and a Mic.